name is Ollie, and today I will be presenting my midterm project for the homeowner expenses calculator. These are the tabs I currently have open, and we'll be working out of VS Code. So, the goal of this program is to collect different categories of expenses for a certain time period and compare the expenses to the user's budget. So it'll then print out whether the user stayed within budget or exceeded it. And I opted to use modular programming here instead of putting all of the logic inside the main function, just to divide it up into smaller pieces and make it easier to read the main function and easier to explain. So all of my functions are inside the main function here. So functions that handle validation and input and to collect all of the data that we need. There's also a function to display the result. So as you can see, I started by including the standard library and including the IOStream and IOMan IP. The IOStream is so that I can collect input and display input using CIN and COUT. And then I use the second one so that I can format my output so that it looks better and is more cohesive. So as far as the functions, I first write their prototypes so that the compiler knows that these functions are going to be used inside the main function. Because the compiler reads from top to bottom, so it needs to kind of be warned, I suppose, that these functions exist before they're used in a later function, which is the main here. So each of the prototype specifies the return type, which is here, like int, double, void, there is no return. The function name, so as you can see, get start month, get end month, get positive amount, and so on. And it also specifies the parameters. For example, with get end month, we listed start month as a parameter because that will be used in determining whether the end month is a valid input. So in this case, the end month would have to be higher than the start month, or else that would be an invalid input. And it'll return whatever the return type is. So since we're using numbers for the end month and start month, we want it to return a number back to us, and that'll return as an integer. We don't need to use a double in that case because they're whole numbers. So same with everything here. So let's say, for example, to calculate the expenses, I chose to use a double since the input will be a decimal amount. So it can be down to the cent. And so after my prototypes, we go into the main function here, which again controls the flow of the program. And I've called other functions inside here so that it doesn't look so messy and all of our logic is just stored there. We just call the functions. So the first function that we are going to call, or the first two, are to gather our start and end month. So this takes the start month as a parameter, as I said, to make sure it's a valid input, and it then calculates how many months are included in the range. So as we can see here, months is going to equal to the end month minus the start month. And we want to add 1 to that so that we make sure we're including all of the months that this takes place. So even though the month count is calculated, the primary purpose here is to show that the program correctly handles these ranges. So then we start by collecting all of our expenses. As we can see, we have housing, insurance, utilities, maintenance, renovations, groceries, and our eating out budget. And those will be all added up in our total expenses. So yes, all of our functions are designed to be reusable. Instead of writing separate input code for housing, insurance, and so on, I pass the message here to get positive amount. And this will tell the user what to enter. So for example, enter a housing payment. So the function will read the user input and check whether the value is negative or positive. And if the value is negative, then they get a chance to try that again and put in correct input. So I just use that to make the code cleaner and keep from having to continue this function or repeat this function in each of my other functions. Here, instead of showing the calls here in the main function, let's just go down to the definitions. So as we already went over the get start month and the get end month, and the get positive amount. So as I said, it'll loop if it's a negative amount so that they get a chance to try again, and they get this invalid input output until they put a correct value in. All right, so then we go on to our get utilities function, in which we'll be collecting the expenses for the electricity, water, gas, and the internet. And all of those will be included in the total utilities variable. So separating them into their own function is just to keep the process organized and prevent the function from being too long, as is with any modular style of programming. So next we want to calculate our total expenses here. Where are we? Electricity, internet, so on. Okay, so our total expenses, we're going to include the utilities that we just got. It's going to prompt for housing, insurance, maintenance, renovations, so on and so forth. And it's going to return the total value to our main function, and then we'll later compare it to the expected budget. So as we can see here, we'll prompt for the budget for all of those things that I mentioned earlier, and that'll also be returned to the main function for them to be compared. So as far as comparing them, we get down to our display results. And the parameters here are total expenses and total budget. So this is for formatting, to format it to decimal places because that's how money works. And so in each case, it will display the total expenses and then the total budget. Next, we need to determine wherein lies their spending for that selected period. So if the total expenses is greater than the total budget, then they have gone over. And so otherwise, they saved. And I did it this way so that it's not determining just each individual case of exceeding the budget for that particular category, but as a total. So in the case where they exceeded in some categories, but were below the budget in other categories and still netted an amount saved, then they would get an amount saved and not, you were over budget. So I guess now all that's left is to try it out. So let's see here. Make sure I have some good data. So in this example, I'll do what I just said and give an example of where some categories were out of the budget and others were within or lower, and it still nets a saved amount. So let's say we start in May and in June. And our housing payment, that's a pretty fixed amount, so we'll stay within. Insurance, it costs $160 this month. We budgeted for $150. Electricity costs $150. Water $70. Gas $80. Internet $70. And our budget was $300. Let's see, 70, 140, 290, 93, 70. So we're a little over on that one. Our maintenance was 100, but we budgeted for 200. Renovation was 200, but we budgeted for 400. So we're still in the green there. Let's get a little bit more space. Our groceries was 320. We budgeted for 350. And we kept our eating out to a minimum here. And then we had a little leeway. Alright, so in this case, as you can see, some of our categories are, exceeding, and others are below. But it still netted a save. So our total expenses were $24.30, but our budget was $27.50. Let's give another go, just to show some of our input validation. So our starting month is 9. Our end month is 3. Okay, so let's do our end month at 11. Our housing payment was negative 800. Can't do that. Let's try again. Our housing payment was, let's say we got a break this month, 800. Our budget was 1200. Our insurance was 300. We got it took care of something. But our budget was 150. Electricity, we had family in town and they kept the lights on. Let's call it 200. More like 275, 98. So include a decimal somewhere. Our water, again, that family, we'll do, let's say 98, 97. Our gas, it's winter time, gotta stay warm, 273.25. And internet, we went over our data, so 132.18. Our utilities budget was only 300. Yeesh. Maintenance, our family wrecked the place. Not that much, let's say 270. But we were expecting no more than 200. And renovation, we ate out quite a bit this month. All right. We were quite over budget. Our budget was at $2,750. Our expenses were $1,200 over. So $1,224.64. So I guess to conclude, I've created where is it? There we go. A program to demonstrate, some of the concepts that we've learned thus far. Made sure to do some input validation. I've been marked off for that in the past. And, some calculations, all divided into smaller pieces to look better and make it easier to edit in the future if I need to fix a function. And yeah, so it successfully runs and calculates the expenses, compares them to the budget, and prints that out for the user. Thank you so much for entertaining me, and I hope you have a great day.